We're on.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and share my screen here and we'll get started. All right, does everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, I'm Phyllis Snyder, and I'm very excited to see you all again, and, well, see some of you. And I'm glad that you're almost through. Doesn't it feel great to kind of be approaching the end of the race?
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So Dr. Guerin asked me to just talk about, my career path and some of the things, some of the reflections that I've had. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about healthcare leaders and how we overcome obstacles and inspire our teams. So some of the objectives for tonight is just identifying traits required for nurse leaders, those entering their first formal leadership role, different actions to take upon assuming the leadership role in a department, and the essential factors to set that vision and mission for the department. We're going to look at some benefits to utilize coaching principles on the nursing unit to support and develop teams, and different strategies to implement. And I'm sure that all of you have done some of that in your current positions. We're just going to explore it a little bit more and identify key nursing leadership initiatives outlined by the IOM and discuss methods to implement it in our departments and engage staff. So just talking a little bit about my path. It's kind of interesting and really looking back at what my initial goal when I got out of high school was to be an artist. And so I was originally a art major. I did that for a little over a year and decided that I didn't want art to be a job. I wanted it to be a passion. And so I started looking for something else to jump over to. And so I went over to computer science and engineering, thought that was going to be an up-and-coming field, and it definitely was. But what I found is when I got into the nuts and bolts of the curriculum, I didn't like the isolation. I wanted to be where there were more people interaction. And at the same time, I was working in a retail pharmacy where I had a lot of exposure to different diseases and medications. And so I had lots of dialogue with the pharmacists that were there, just about what these drugs were for and what the diseases they were treating. And it really was interesting and got my attention. So I decided, well, hey, nursing is kind of a combination of the science and the art. And so I jumped in, and I knew that I had to do it 100% and, fully committed, because I wasn't up until that point. And so started taking all the prerequisites. But what I found going through is that there were a lot of roadblocks that you encounter on your path to your career. And so I would just say, don't let a roadblock be an obstacle. You have to find a way to go around that obstacle. And don't ever, let no just absolutely be no, at first glance. There's certainly, exceptions to every rule. And I've encountered that many times in my career. So starting off, after I was in nursing school for a little while, I thought, well, having a little clinical experience would be good. So how about a CNA? Well, the hospital that was in the local community was where I targeted, and I went in, and they didn't want anything to do with me. So I had to go around that obstacle and eventually got a position working as a CNA. And I knew that having that role was really key because I wanted to work in that facility after I got my license. And so knowing that they would be watching every move to make sure that I was either successful or wasn't going to be eligible for that position, I made sure that everything was in alignment. So after I got my license, that was back when you had your RNIP and you kind of worked under this interim permit, so that you could actually practice. We didn't get our results right away. So I approached the director of the unit and kind of let her know what my goals were, and they told me that no, they don't hire new graduates, and they knew that I would also have an additional year of school where I'd be working part-time. And so they were very reluctant to have somebody that would be going to a per diem type role that was new. So off to the CNO's office I go, with all of my rationale and the benefits for the program, for their organization, why it's important for them to hire within. And the end of the story is that they did go ahead and hire me as a staff nurse in that role. And I had, so many stories going through the different roles, but probably the other significant area was when I was functioning as an emergency department director, and I had a couple of hospitals that I was responsible for in 2 different counties. And the CEO came and said, hey, I want you to take on this 3rd hospital and manage that as well. And so I scheduled an appointment with him, and I really sat down and walked through that, yeah, I could do another hospital, but I didn't really want to continue doing the same thing. I wanted to develop my skills and background, and so I would really like to explore other departments and get a full breadth of my understanding of all the different nursing areas within the hospital. So he was somebody that I really admire because he actually changed his whole plan and his whole structure for the hospital, the one hospital that I eventually went to, and created an assistant chief nursing officer role so that I could get that experience. And that's something that I remember, and I try and emulate with staff that work under my direction as well. Because, just because you have one method, you always have to think of your employees and what their goals are going forward, and how can you best facilitate their goals. And he really did that for me, and I was much appreciative for that. And that's really what helped drive me into the CNO role. And right now I'm actually functioning in a new role at our corporate office. The focus is really on developing clinical excellence and standardization across nursing, and developing educational programs for our corporate office. So really something new. I'm really blazing a trail with the role, and it's kind of exciting. So more to come. So don't let a roadblock stop you. So now you're a leader and you're going to step out into the crowd. And so how do you go about, what are you going to do? How are you going to approach it? So I think the first thing to remember is being a leader is an honor and a privilege, and certainly there's a lot of responsibility that goes with that. And so you want to focus on having high standards and maintaining your clinical skills so that you can be a resource to your team. You're going to have more problems dropped in your lap than you can ever think would ever land in your lap. And some things you're going to say, oh my God, I can't believe that happened in my hospital. Because I've had many situations where that's occurred and you're just like, what were people thinking? So you want to remember that, being a leader is not about having a title or a designation. It's about your influence and how you can inspire your team to achieve excellence and all of the initiatives that you're focusing on. It's influencing everybody with that passion that you have for nursing, and really trying to be infectious with what, drives you going forward to achieve those goals and all. So, so the one thing that I was surprised about when I had my first director role was the fact that there really wasn't any training, formalized training. They had a checklist and all of that to go by, but there wasn't somebody that could hand off and teach me all the world, the wisdom of prior directors, because that role had been vacant for a while. And so,
Phyllis, I'm sorry, but Lindsay posted a question. How do you maintain your clinical skills in a leadership position working Monday through Friday, 7 to 7?
Easily, because your staff are going to have periods where there's a high influx of patients, where they need assistance. You're going to be jumping in and helping with them. Even as a CNO, I would jump in and help the staff in the departments when it would get busy, whether it be, helping with a patient, starting an IV, passing a medication. You have to maintain that clinical competence. And I'll say there are some nurses in hospitals that I've been a part of that haven't done that. And to me, it's very sad when you have a need of a patient come up and the clinical manager or the director is there and they have to go get a staff nurse to help them, where they could just quite as easily jump in and help meet the need for that patient, or at least start the process until the staff nurse is available. So that's something that I think is key. And you're not going to be as sharp as your staff because they're doing it every day, hour and hour, day in and day out. But you do have to have some skill. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So then you're going to go into this thing called the honeymoon phase. Okay, and so you think of the honeymoon when you get married, everything's all bright and rosy and everything's going well, and your husband, when he leaves his socks in the middle of the floor, you don't really care, because you're in love and all of that. Well, you kind of have a honeymoon phase for your new director as well, but you really need to take that period of grace where they're going to give you a lot of latitude and go to school on the unit. You need to find out all the ins and outs of how they do things, how they've done it in the past. But the very first thing is you have to get to know your staff. And so some of the things that directors have done is that they come in, they'll meet with staff, they'll take a picture of them, they'll slap it on the back of their door and maybe write a couple things that are pertinent about that staff member, maybe something that they enjoy doing or the names of their kids, because then you're going to be able to start building those connections. You're going to need to find out all about policies, procedures, practices, what's working on the unit, what's keeping people up at night, because they're thinking about what that next error is going to be. So pull that all together, and really you want to, throughout all the conversation, is find some low-hanging fruit, things that are easy fixable, and fix them. Because the more that you can show and demonstrate that you're a leader of action, that's going to build rapport and trust with your staff. And so you're going to have probably 3 to 6 months that is the honeymoon phase before they're going to really start looking to make sure that you're acting on their behalf. So the other thing that really needs to happen as you're coming into a role is you're going to have to set mission, vision, goals, and your plan. And I know all through our school we've heard that these are really important key elements, but it's not something that's going to go away, and it's something that's really going to help set the culture for the unit for you. And it's interesting, I was very fortunate this last week that I was able to go to the Becker's Healthcare Conference in Chicago. Now there's like 6,000 leaders that go to this. And we were real fortunate that we actually had 2 past presidents that were there as speakers, Clinton and G.W. Bush. And it's interesting, each of them had their own way of presenting, the challenges of office and all of that, and they tied it to healthcare. But both of them, in different ways, brought up these concepts that you have to have a mission. You have to, fully share that mission, share the vision, make sure everybody is in alignment, that there's a plan going forward, and that everybody's well aware of the plan. They might not agree with it, but certainly you have to have that so that you have your team around you. And both of them talked about, as you're building your team, all those people that you work with, you want to hire, or you want to engage those people that are going to be supportive of you and provide you clear feedback. So you don't want to have everybody that's just like you. You want to have a very diverse group, and you want to have opposing viewpoints. Because if everybody's the same and you just get the same response as what your response is, you're not going to have a well-rounded picture of where you need to go. So, it was fabulous listening to them. and all of the wisdom that they have from their experience as president. So you're going to start by building unit culture, hiring the right team, building in that diversity, and then setting the expectations. What do you expect? How are you going to interact? How do you expect team members to interact with each other? What's the best method to communicate? How are we going to raise the bar for quality and safety? And most of all, we need to make sure we're involving all of our staff in that process. So I think it's very important that we're keeping the patient at the center of everything that we do. And everything really needs to connect back to that purpose. Why we're here, who we're caring for. And when we're doing that, we're going to make sure all of our initiatives are right on target. All right, so this is the first video we're going to watch, and I've got to, once I click on it, I've got to reshare the screen. So we'll take a look at this.
In regards to subordinate leadership, how do you begin to change the culture / school of thought of an industry or a company? You know, I'm not sure if they mean in regards to how do you change your subordinate leaderships, or if you are subordinate. I'm not sure which one of those it is, but regardless, doesn't matter. Because guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to lead. That's what I'm going to do. Whether I'm the subordinate guy or the superior guy, I'm going to lead. Oh, I want to change things and make them a certain way. Cool. I'm going to do those things. I'm going to make those things happen. That's how you do it. And if you're doing the right things for the right reasons, your message is going to spread. You know how many bad SEAL platoons I was in? How many? 0. You know why? Because me and my buddies, we always had a good attitude. We always had the right attitude, and that spread to the other people that were with us. Now, there's a red flag that you can get for yourself. And this is frustration. When you start saying to yourself, which I'm not saying this necessarily, but this kind of question is coming from somebody that wants change to happen, but it's not happening. So they're getting frustrated and they're thinking they aren't on board, or they don't care, and they aren't professional. They're not motivated like me. They don't have a good attitude. So there's a lot of blame going on right there. Yeah. So this isn't about them, though. It's about you. And it's about leading. From any level in the chain of command. If you're leading, if you're doing the right things for the right reasons, that's going to spread. So the classic example I talk about it all the time is if you're exercising extreme ownership, if you're saying, you know what, I got this, there was a mistake made, it was my fault, that spreads. If you're humble, that spreads. If you have an open mind, that spreads. If you're being aggressive, not aggressive towards other people, but if you're being aggressive in pursuit of your goal, that spreads. You know what doesn't spread? Is when you're aggressive at people. Oh, actually, it does spread, but it's negative. Yeah. You don't want that. You know what doesn't spread? It doesn't spread when you're trying to get people to do things because it's going to make you look good. Yeah. That doesn't spread. You can't get people to behave better because you want to look good. It doesn't work. Yeah. People see right through that. Oh, he wants to look good. You know what I'm going to do? Sabotage. Now, the other thing I've been saying lately, because people are surprised or whatever, or not surprised, but they're concerned. They don't see how it's going to work so fast. And I say, you know what? It's not going to work fast. It's got to be, and here's the word, it's got to be a campaign. It's got to be a campaign. It's not like World War II was not one battle. World War I was not one battle. It's a campaign to win in Europe. It's a campaign to win in the Pacific. It takes battle after battle after battle. And guess what? You don't win them all. You lose some of them. And so you're going to, on this campaign, you're going to win and you're going to lose. But you got to have the persistence and the patience and the persuasiveness to continue. And another piece of this is you are best off if you go indirect and not be like, hey, you need to act like me. No. People don't like that. You need to just act how you're acting. And if you're doing it, like I said, the right things for the right reasons, people are going to see you and they're going to follow.
All right. I have to switch back here. So what did you guys think about that one? Are you guys seeing the screen again?
Yes, and they had lots of positive comments.
Okay. So I really like the fact that he's talking about, leadership's not easy, and it's not something that you just do once. That whole concept of it's a campaign is just something that you really need to embrace, because it's not one thing that you're going to do. It's going to be, a continual effort over time. And, if you're focusing on changing the culture is something that takes a long time to change. So it's not going to be a quick fix. It's something that the team needs to work together with you at the helm. So be the example, walk the talk, know your strengths and weaknesses and limitations. And, everybody has different strengths and weaknesses. And so part of the joy of being the leader is that you can identify those strengths and weaknesses, and you can put them all together into a nice package, and you can assign things based on people's strengths and weaknesses so that you end up with a better product. Be honest and transparent, and make sure you're focusing on building those relationships. And I can't say enough how you need to communicate. You can't over-communicate. And so I think that's probably the biggest challenge in healthcare, is how do you effectively communicate with your staff so that everybody's on the same page moving forward. Listen, as busy as we are, probably the biggest challenge that we have is the ability to listen to our staff and really hear what they're saying and addressing those issues that they bring forward. And then we have to be accountable, but not just for our own actions, but also for the actions of our staff. And always remember that, you're the leader now, but you started out as a follower. So identify those key followers and start coaching and mentoring them and working on a succession plan. I think that's one of the things that I see also often across nursing, is that there's not enough focus on developing future leaders, so that, when the existing leader steps out or gets promoted, there's somebody that can easily take over and continue the march, developing the department. All right, so this video is a little bit about nursing leadership specifically, and let me go ahead and pull that one up. Are you guys seeing the video?
Leadership is important in every aspect of being a nurse, from all the way through.
No, we're not. Sorry.
Okay.
I think the best
Give me a
nurse
second.
leaders are those that span boundaries.
You naturally
How about
want
now?
to do something to help others, and putting yourself forward is
Yes,
really
Yes.
yes.
Yes, we are now.
the
Okay.
process.
To get out of your comfort zone, you just have to take the risk.
Mentorship is so critical. It is a critical piece of this leadership campaign.
The Institute of Medicine, in its landmark 2010 report, The Future of Nursing, Leading Change, Advancing Health, deemed leadership so important it is one of the report's 4 key messages and 2 of the recommendations: to expand opportunities for nurses to lead and diffuse collaborative improvement efforts, and to prepare and enable nurses to lead change to advance health.
To me, being a nurse leader is being a voice for the community. I think it's really about bringing others to the table with you. It's serving as a mentor to someone else so that they can arise and become a leader.
Nurses that bring a perspective from the patient, but also work with physicians and other members of the healthcare team to make changes that will impact patients in the hospital, outside in the communities.
They're energetic, rising nurse leaders with strong vision.
The Campaign for Action, created to implement the IOM recommendations, has turned a spotlight on nurse leadership. In 2014, the campaign named 10 breakthrough leaders in nursing to help transform the nation's healthcare system, create healthier communities, and build a culture of health.
I helped create the first nurse manager job share in North Carolina at my institution because I wanted to work. I had small children, so did my job share partner, and so we did the first job share in nursing. My life took me in many different directions where I got to learn lots of skills, kind of practice some things out, and then gather it all back up and move back home and follow my dream and help to provide services to women who otherwise wouldn't have had them.
Leadership is about stepping outside of your comfort zone.
Well, I think you have to push yourself to be uncomfortable. I mean, that's how you learn. So if you're just doing the things that you're really good at, you're not learning and changing and growing.
I decided to go for an opening as a night supervisor, knowing that I had little chance to get the position because I was only 18 months into my nursing career. So it was a surprise when I was actually chosen for the position.
Leadership is about mentoring.
There are mentors that are formal, and there are some maybe that are even informal, and then there are some that seek you out instead of you seeking them out. But it's such an amazing part of our profession to mentor one another.
If you see someone that you want to emulate, you see someone that makes you have a wow factor, ask the person to mentor you.
And leadership means being at the table when policy decisions are made.
We must make sure that we are not just knocking at the door and hoping someone will open the door. We need to knock the door down.
To address the IOM statement that, quote, leadership is fundamental to advancing the profession, 20 nursing organizations have formed the Nurses on Boards Coalition to put 10,000 nurses on boards by 2020.
We can care very deeply about making things better for people through systems, through policies, but if we're not connected to the places where those decisions are made, then it's more a goal, a desire, a hope. We want more than hope. We want serious action.
To be a nurse means to be a leader. Nurses work to build healthier communities and oversee complex healthcare for people in hospitals, in their homes, in long-term residential settings, in schools, and wherever they live, work, play, and worship.
I'm on a school advisory board, and I approached it, and they said they needed a person in charge of strategic planning, and I said I can do that, and they were surprised. I said, well, hospitals, organizations, that's what we do.
Sometimes it's just showing up, whether it's an association, a larger organization, a committee, a board, what have you. Showing up is half the battle.
Pathways to leadership are many, through community organizations, the PTA, neighborhood groups, nonprofit agencies, and in your workplace. Joining a committee and then leading it can be the first step to getting on a board of directors and making policy decisions about healthcare.
Find the things that you're passionate about. Find the things that you love. Those are the things that you'll shine in because your heart will be in it.
Nurses, some 3 million strong and the most trusted healthcare profession in the country, are passionate about their profession and dedicated to helping others. The message from the IOM and the Campaign for Action is that nurses need to be just as dedicated and passionate about taking roles in making policy.
We can't get any of this done without nurses stepping up to the plate and being those leaders that we need.
As Florence Nightingale said, to be in charge is certainly not only to carry out the proper measures yourself, but to see that everyone else does so too.
All right, let me switch back here. We'll pop out and reshare. All right, so what'd y'all think? A lot of really good points in there, huh? Stepping out of your comfort zone. I really like how Bolton says that, you got to break the door down. And we really do need to have nurses at all levels of the organization and on committees. The challenge is, how do you get them to participate? How do we get them to be excited about it? How do we get them to share their expertise and their time so that we can further our profession? So one of the ways that we can do that certainly is by coaching and mentoring our staff. And it starts by having a really engaged leader who can really share that excitement and be very impactful and help the team overcome barriers. And it takes employees really getting those employees that are engaged and excited. And, it's interesting because as you start getting that, you end up with the synergy and you start having that movement. And once you have that movement, it happens slowly, but it's very exciting because you can start seeing that change, and that perpetuates more movement. And so, really getting that going is essential. So I would just ask you that as you pull this up here and you guys are looking at the screen, what's the first thing that you see? Anybody? Are you guys there?
Yes.
We are here. We see math problems.
Okay. Well, is there anything that sticks out to you?
Well, number 2 is wrong.
Yes. Yeah. No, exactly. And so number 2 is wrong, but 2 of the 3 are correct. And so I think one of the challenges for us as leaders is it's a natural tendency to always go to what's wrong.
Yes.
But there's so much good that's going on that's right. We really have to communicate what we're doing right and recognize those accomplishments rather than just focusing on what was wrong. And so that's really the takeaway there in a simple way going forward. And one of the ways that we can do that is by coaching and mentoring. Now, I'm not going to walk through all of these elements. You guys can look at them later. But really for us as leaders, we want to identify those individuals that we can coach and mentor and that we can grow. And I can't tell you how rewarding it is that after you've had somebody that you've worked with and done the coaching, the mentoring, and helped them develop through their career. I mean, I've had many people through my career that I've done that for, and one in particular started off as a staff nurse and now is a CNO in another organization. And so really seeing that individual progress all throughout his career and how, he engaged and developed is just very exciting and very rewarding. So coaches and mentors support you. They walk with you, encourage you. They're going to challenge you. They're going to confront you about things that perhaps there's another direction that you can go or another perspective that you need to see. We all need encouragement. They're definitely going to encourage you. One thing's for certain, healthcare is stressful, and we need that encouragement from all of our peers and mentors. And they affirm what we're doing. So we can get some of our lessons from football. You'll notice everything's been green with football. And this is a little clip from a movie, and then we're going to just kind of go to the next clip and talk a little bit about coaching. So you see the coaches walking with them, encouraging them, telling them how far it's going to be, how they're progressing. So he walks with them, brings them forward. This is a next clip. It's a little bit further along, and it's how he addresses some of his team players that are not as engaged as he would like them.
So, Coach, how strong is Westview this year? A lot stronger than we are. You already written Friday night down as a loss, bro? Well, not if I know we could beat them.
Now, have you guys had some employees like that in your departments? Some that are negative about moving the organization forward or about a policy or practice?
All the time.
Yeah, they're writing yes as you.
Okay. Good. Here. Oops. I want one more thing out of that video.
So, Coach.
We're going to just watch it all the way through now.
We are. You already written Friday night down as a loss, bro? Well, not if I know we could beat them. Come here, Brock. You too, Jeremy. What, am I in trouble now? Not yet. I want to see you do the death crawl again, except I want to see your absolute best.
Now, the death crawl is what you guys saw in the clip before this.
30? I think you can go to 50. 50. I can go to 50 if nobody's on my back. I think you can do it with Jeremy on your back. But even if you can, I want you to promise me you're going to do your best. All right? Your best. Okay. You're going to give me your best. I'm going to give you my best. All right, one more thing. I want you to do it blindfolded. Why? I want you giving up at a certain point when you can go further. Get down. Jeremy, get on his back.
So this is one of the informal leaders of the team. And either you're going to engage the informal leader and get him on your side, or he's going to be going against you.
There you go. Give me good effort. That way, Brock. Keep coming. There you go. Good start. A little bit left. A little bit left. There you go,
Okay, we're
Brock.
going to fast forward just a little bit here.
Good strength. Quit! Don't quit! Don't quit! Brock Kelly, you don't quit! Keep going! Keep going! Go, Brock Kelly! You don't quit on me! No! You keep going! You keep going! Go, Brock! 10 more steps! 10 more! 10 more! 10 more! Keep going! Don't quit! Give me your heart! You can! You can! 5 more! 5 more! Come on, Brock! Come on! Don't quit! Don't quit! Come on, Brock! 2 more! 1 more! Go, Brock. You're in the end zone. Brock, you are the most influential player on this team. If you walk around defeated, so will they. Don't tell me you can't give me more than what I've been seeing. You just carried a 140-pound man across this whole field in your arms. Brock, I need you. God's gifted you with the ability of leadership. Don't waste it. Doug, can I count on you? Yes.
So what did he do all through that scenario? Now, we're not going to be yelling at our employees like that, don't get me wrong. But he's encouraging him. He knew that he could go further than he was giving to the team. And he's very influential. So the coach identified this is a key player. And you're going to have those key players on your unit that you're going to need to get on your side. Those naysayers, those people that have been there for umpteen years that have seen everything and done everything. So how do we engage those and get those on our side so that we're able to drive change forward? That's really important for us to do. So what's in it for all of us? If we're successful, and we will be, we're going to have a healthy work environment, great teamwork, communication. It's going to be some place that we're going to feel comfortable going to every day. We spend so much time at work. We want to make sure that that is a place that we actually see progress and we feel proud of. And we are going to have naysayers. So one thing about the naysayers is, are we going to always have them? Absolutely. But if we're effectively leading our teams, then there's 2 outcomes that we're going to have. We're either going to inspire those individuals to greatness, or they're going to jump on and they're going to change out of desperation because we're applying and holding them accountable to all of the expected changes. And they're either going to make those changes or they're going to be out of the organization. And so that consistency, that making sure that we're not turning a blind eye to something just because that's going to be, you know, tough to address, we've got to address it so that we have consistency. So summing it up, it starts with each of us. Each one of us as a leader are responsible for our results. We have to address the culture. And I think that that was really what was compelling at this healthcare conference that I was just recently at. They kept coming back to culture. If we don't have the right culture, we don't have the right environment, change is hard. And so we've got to focus on that, and it's something that's really difficult to change. We've got to be accountable, we've got to set expectations, we've got to involve all of our team. But when we do, when we take action, we'll have great success. And the challenge for all of us as we're taking action is to bring someone with us, to get others involved, to stimulate that enthusiasm so that we can grow all the leaders in nursing. And I think one thing that's sad is that really every nurse is a leader, but they don't view themselves as a leader at the bedside. And we've got to change that around so that they see in the mirror the leader that they are. All right, and that's it.
Professor, I have a question. This is Simi.
Hi, Simi.
In my hospice, I know it's not a big hospital setting, but outside the hospital setting, nurses don't stay as long with a company because of many factors, you know. I've heard from my leaders that, you know, we train them, we put so much effort in them, they just learn everything and then they just move on. How do I take that as a new graduate in nursing leadership and prove myself that, you know, no, nobody stays in one job forever. I mean, it's a known fact, but how do I turn that around and say, no, I will learn and I will stay and I will improve this company or this organization that I'm working for?
Right. Well, and you actually have that occurring in the hospitals as well, that, you know, people coming in, getting trained, getting educated, and then moving on to other things. So it's a challenge just in healthcare, making sure that we have the right environment for our staff. And so there are some jobs where you're going to have that turnover. And I think if you look at the industry, I think it's unrealistic to think that people are going to stay in one job now. So what we need to do as leaders is we have to have the right culture, the right environment. We have to engage our staff, have them feel comfortable in our environment, make them feel like they're a valued commodity in helping us achieve all of our goals. And yeah, they may go out, but if the environment is right, you know, it's not always greener on the other side. If the environment's right in our facility, if our house is in order, if they go out and see it's not what they want, they'll come back. And we've had many instances where people have come back as well. But you know, again, you got to look at the organization, and perhaps the organization doesn't have the leadership opportunities that individual is looking for. And so you're going to naturally have some movement no matter what you do.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? I'll have to go back and read all your comments because, you know, I can't, because I'm talking.
There were a zillion comments.
So.
I wanted to ask Simi though, because she said there were multiple reasons. I'm curious, why do you think that they leave there, Simi?
The first one is health insurance.
Oh, it's a biggie.
The second one is pay. of course, the hospitals pay more. They pay more for evening shift. They pay differential for night shift and weekends. And we have a flat pay, whether you're full-time, part-time, per diem, or working night shifts and weekends. And in hospice, we cover all. So it's a lot of work. I know it's not as hectic as it is in the hospital, but it is very long hours and we have to drive a lot. And there are different factors. People are not comfortable going to other people's homes. And I guess, like Professor Snyder said, there's not that much room for growth as a leader or as a nurse. Like if you're hired in a role as a case manager, so you'll have up to 20 patients and you'll just have that. So as soon as one dies, you get another one, and then you get another one, and then you get another one. So you're not growing. It's the same role over and over.
Yeah, those things really make sense. And I think, some of the things about the pay and some of that, because, in my background, I did home care at the VA, and it was a very desirable place to work, but we had all of the same pay, things and air insurance and, that you get from working at the VA. Plus, we had a government car to drive. So, yes, people would move on for different kinds of opportunities, but I think there was a lot of job satisfaction because it's a satisfying role, especially when you get all the VA pay stuff as well. So what I mean, hear what I'm saying, that like some of those things, and I'm trying to remember it in the motivation stuff, the what are they, the satisfiers versus the other part, and so if they're not going to get equal pay and things like that, that's a hard one.
And at the end of the year, like there's no guarantee that you'll get a raise.
Right.
Unless you switch jobs, your pay won't increase. And that's one big reason. Like they'll work for hospice for 6 months or 1 year, and then they'll switch, so their pay will increase. And another thing is charting. Every company has different ways that they chart. Either it's manual by hand, like paper charting, or it's different computer systems. And sometimes certain nurses have a lot of problems learning the computer system. So
yeah, that's crazy. It's what I hesitate to say it, but it's one of the advantages of like when you have a national health service or something like some countries do, because there is a lot more similarities and sharing of information and things across system or throughout systems. But that's so true. It's so crazy how many different systems there are. Well, thank you. Somebody said, Phyllis, that they would like you back as a professor teaching classes.
Oh, well, that's great, because I want to come back.
I know. I have to get out of her way, so retire for good.
Oh, it's great seeing everybody again. So we'll have to see if we see you over at graduation. I'll have to see about checking y'all out.
I have a question.
Yes.
This is Daisy, and this is for Dr. Guerin and Professor Snyder. And I hate to keep harping on something, but I would love to know what both of your responses would be to one of your directors or leaders that told you that culture cannot be changed. How would you respond to that from one of your leaders?
Well, I've actually had people say that. And, I think that what I've seen is that they're negative until they start seeing momentum. So in one organization, we had gone in, really set what the mission, the vision, the goals were, and the expectations, outlined all of that. Shared where we thought the organization was going to be a year from then, which, everybody's skeptical. But one of the things that we really emphasized is that this is the responsibility of everybody. It's not a nursing initiative. This is something that the whole hospital needs to be on board with, and we have to hold each other accountable. And so as we started, following up on that accountability piece, and everybody started seeing that, oh, they're serious, they really mean that we're moving that direction, then you started seeing people fall into alignment. And then slowly you started seeing the culture starting to shift. It doesn't happen quickly. And in fact, a culture change takes years. So even just a little momentum is a win. And you have to celebrate those wins so people continue to go in that direction.
I wasn't in the position to be the head of a whole organization, but as Phyllis has. But what I would noticed remember I was the director of the clinics and the nurse coordinators, there was one particular person that, I'm not only was not a believer in culture change, but was such a negative person herself. And she was like the person in the football clip, affecting everybody else. And I think we were talking in the 511 course, we were talking about conflict and things like that. And there are some people that they don't seem to have any insight that it's them. And with that person, eventually she left because she could not change herself. It was always someone else. And so she never could see that. She never could buy into what was going on. And it was, again, it was everybody else's fault. And so she finally ended up leaving. But yeah, it's really difficult when you have people that do have those attitudes, especially again, when they have no insight and they don't want to change themselves.
Definitely agree. I had an ICU nurse that was that person you're talking about. And it took manager, a leader change, and then that leader started holding the department accountable, which then meant addressing this long-term employee that had been there for 20 years. And her behavior had been that way. It got to the point where everybody, oh, well, that's just, so-and-so. That's the way she is. Yeah. And it's that's not acceptable. And so, you got to give a lot of credit to that leader for starting to whittle away at that behavior. And eventually what ended up happening is it went through the whole counseling process. Mm-hmm. She ended up sending the employee out on a decision-making leave, which is basically the employee's time to reflect and say, do I really want to stay at this job or do I move on? And the employee came back and said that she wanted to stay, but that she was going to take some time off. And we had offered employee assistance because we have that as a benefit at the hospital. And she took us up on it. Actually ended up going to counseling, and this one had a really great ending because she came back and she was a different person because she finally was able to see that it was her. Wow. So you can be successful, but it really takes consistency.
Well, I like something you said at the beginning, which is so true, or maybe I just heard it because I wanted to hear that, and that is about hiring the right people and bringing them in. It's so much harder to get rid of somebody who's been there a long time who's negative, and even though than to select the right person at the beginning and build your team at the beginning. You don't always have that chance. You may come in and things are already formed and those people are there, but to me it shows the importance of hiring the right people, because I was in a system, again being the VA, that it was really, really hard to get rid of people. Could be done, but really a difficult process. So, bring the right people in, interview well, and look at that process. Anything else? We're about at an hour.
I had a question for Professor Snyder. This is Dana.
Hey, Dana.
Hey, hi. So I wanted to know if you had any resources, like books, basically reading, to help with indirect communication. It's a little bit of a challenge for me to get my message across without being firm. And so I find myself avoiding conflict. So
yeah, there actually is a great book, and it's called Crucial Conversations.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've ever heard of that one. I can certainly email you the the information and
Crucial
the author.
conversations.
Crucial conversations. And then he has a sister book along with it that's like phase 2 of that. I can't remember the name of it, but yeah, excellent book. And it helps to address those issues, just like you're saying, so that you're not avoiding it, that you're not like soft pedaling it, that you are direct.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anyone else? Or shall we wrap up for the evening? Okay, well, thank you again to Phyllis here. It's been a wonderful talk, a great PowerPoint, and it's such a delight to have somebody with your background and experience both talk to the students and to teach. We're going to do again. Yeah.
It's great to see everybody again as well.
So I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting and say goodbye to everybody.
All right. See you all.
Bye.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Night.
Good.